Give me a kiss to build a dream on, and my imagination will thrive upon that kiss. Sweetheart, I ask no more than this, a kiss to build a dream on. Give me a kiss before you leave me, and my imagination will feed my hungry heart. Do, 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 do. Leave me one thing before we part, a kiss to build a dream on. Welcome to the Ayn Rand Center UK Sexy Valentine's Day edition of the Daily Objective. I'm Jonathan Hoenig. Let me put these right over here, right next to Miss Rand, to celebrate the Daily Objective and the Valentine's Day of such. This is episode number 693, and we're so delighted you've joined us from all over the world. We are the Daily Objective Ayn Rand Center UK, but we are a community of objectivists from all over the world. A community of sexy objectivists, romantic objectivists, heartfelt objectivists who join each other Monday through Friday, every workday at this YouTube channel for the Daily Objective. And we have something that previous generations of objectivists have only dreamed about. We have society's largest, lifetime's largest, history's largest daily presentation of ideas, celebrating and inspired by Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. And you're part of it. You're part of our daily philosophy posse, and we thank you for being part of it. And you're a part of it by being here, and you're a big part of it by hitting the super chat, which is located just there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We're not supported by any university, by any non-for-profit. We are supported by generous, I won't say donations, it's just participation from people just like you, people from all over the world of various levels of you know what I'm fucking talking about, of objectivism, participating in this ongoing discussion of objectivism at every level, from people who are just reading Ayn Rand for the first time to people like Robert Nasser, who's already started us off. Robert Nasser, who said, give a little love to the Ayn Rand Center UK, $2 US. I agree with that. Give a little love to our discussion, and we have a great one for you today. So show some value for value for all that we're doing here at the Ayn Rand Center UK. And here we go. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your associates. It's time for the Daily Objective. And let me just say, this is not part of objectivism. This is our own interpretation, but we're here to give it to you. So what is love? We're here to talk about, love is it. What is love? I'm not going to sing Hathaway's ephemeral tune, What is Love? But let's just go to what most people would say love is. Or when you Google search, what is love? What do you get? You get stuff like such. Every act of love, so say scholars, is a selfless declaration. Every act of selfish love is a declaration of faith. True love is selfish. It is prepared to sacrifice. And thank you, Apollo Zeus. A bunch of hearts. I'm going to gather those all up and I'm throwing them back at you. And wait a minute. Those flowers, Bob, are for you, or one of those flowers are for you, Apollo. Thank you for being part of our philosophy posse. Sadhu Vajrabhishma says that true love is selfish. It is prepared to sacrifice. We hear this over and over again. True love is selfish. This is from Corinthians, number 3.5, if there is such a thing. True love is selfish. Well, here's what I believe Ayn Rand would say to that. Phooey. True love is selfish. And we, as objectivists, are the only ones, and as Miss Rand would say, I believe, are the only ones who not only talk about love this way, but make a compelling case for selfishness. Love is selfish. So let's start, as we always do, with Miss Rand herself. One gains a profoundly personal, selfish joy from the mere existence of the person one loves. It is one's own personal selfish happiness that one seeks, earns, and derives from love. I mean, how often do we hear that, right? We hear, as we just established, love is selfless. Love is all about the other. Love is all about sacrifice to the other. If you're really in love, you're going to sacrifice yourself to them. But imagine at your wedding day, you said, honey, I really love you selflessly. In fact, I don't really love you at all. In fact, I'm sacrificing my life because I kind of feel sorry for you, and I'm going to be selfless. My life, my love doesn't matter. And, you're not my real love, but I'm going to sacrifice what I really want, which is this person over there, and sacrifice that for you, which is my maybe number 2 or number 5 or number 20. I mean, imagine if your lover said that to you, if your romantic partner said that to you, I'm sacrificing my life for you. You'd say, I don't want that. Quoting now again from Miss Rand, a selfless, disinterested love is a contradiction in terms. It means that one is indifferent to that which one values. And that is exactly what that idea is. Imagine if on your wedding day, you're giving your vows and you said, well, I'm being selfless. You're my number 2. Quoting from the Romantic Manifesto now, Ayn Rand, quote, one falls in love with the embodiment of the values that formed a person's character, which are reflected in his widest goals or smallest gestures, which create the style of his soul, the individual style of unique, irrepeatable, irreplaceable consciousness. It is one's own sense of life that acts as the selector and responds to what it recognizes as one's own basic values in the person of another. It reminds me so much of what Dr. Peikoff talked about in one of his podcasts, which I'll recommend in a moment, as one's love being one's alter ego, a second self or a different version of oneself. But we're getting to some of the real heart, the real essence, the real selfish essence, I believe, of what love is. Now, Rand says that concern for the welfare of one who loves is a rational part of one's selfish interest, right? Love is selfish. Quoting now again, if a man who is passionately in love with his wife spends a fortune to cure her of a dangerous disease, it would be absurd to claim that it had been a sacrifice for her sake, not his own. So I'm going to say that again. If a man spent a fortune to cure her of a dangerous disease, it would be absurd to claim that he does it as a sacrifice for her sake, not his own, and that it makes no difference to him personally and selfishly whether she lives or dies. I mean, that is ludicrous, and that's exactly what the commonplace definition of love is and what the objectivist definition of love is not. There's so many wonderful pictures, speaking of Miss Rand and her husband, Mr. Frank O'Connor. In fact, Miss Rand, when she was not in her professional capacity, referred to herself as Mrs. Frank O'Connor, as Mrs. O'Connor. In fact, if you go to Valhalla, New York, Miss Rand is entombed as Ayn Rand O'Connor. And once again, talk to Harry Binswanger, who's on our channel, talk to Dr. Peikoff or listen to Dr. Peikoff, and she refers to herself very frequently, almost exclusively, I believe, in the personal sense as Mrs. O'Connor. And there's so much to study, people who say, oh, they know objectivism, selfishness, capitalism, blah, blah, blah. You haven't even hit the tip, let alone the substance of all there is to learn and enjoy about Miss Rand, objectivism, her relationship with Frank O'Connor. Some of what you'll find at the Ayn Rand Institute's website is some of her personal inscriptions. her first book, 1936, to Frank, my only inspiration, our book, and my first temple to him. 1957, to quote Francisco, your fourth temple, for being alive and alive, for everything you are, for the sum of our 30 years together, 30 years and forever, with all my love, Ayn, 1957. Such passion. People who say that Ayn Rand is cold and objectivism is sterile and logic. I mean, so ignorant of what Ayn Rand was, what her feelings, I believe, for certainly Mr. O'Connor were. And here's 1965 to Frank on her final book. Your sixth temple, or rather, the foundation for all the others. Here it is, with all my selfish love, Ayn. And, you know, that really kind of gets to it, that real selfish love she felt for Mr. O'Connor, and that I believe anyone who really knows what love feels like understands that love is selfish. It is profoundly selfish, and it is integrated. This again from the Romantic Manifesto. When love is a conscious integration of reason and emotion, of mind and values, then and only then is it the greatest reward of man's life. You know, kind of gets to that point that love is not just sex, it is an integration of reason, of emotion, of mind and values. Contrast that with everything, in a sense, modern, beginning, I'm sorry to say, with Hugh Hefner. Well, maybe not beginning, but, exemplified, I think, by Hugh Hefner. I remember, I couldn't find it online, but a famous quote about Hugh Hefner, who was asked once, aren't you afraid that all these women are with you just for your money? And Hefner's response was, I don't care why they're with me. Now, what is that? As long as they're with me, right? What is that? Selfishness? No. It is hedonism. It is, again, quoting from the voice of reason, the man who lacks self-esteem. Quoting now, to the man who lacks self-esteem, sex is an attempt to fake it, to acquire its momentary illusion. And what is now, as I look at it, and I give Hefner a lot of credit on some levels of breaking some sexual taboos. One of Miss Rand's most wonderful interviews is with Playboy. I'd certainly recommend that. But Hugh Hefner, qua the Playboy, is pretty gross, right? It's just gross. And it's continued on now with people like Andrew Tate, who have done probably a half dozen shows on. So check them out at the Ayn Rand Center UK Library. But even another one who I didn't know, hadn't even heard of this guy, if not for Rosie Ginsburg, it's the head of the Ayn Rand Center UK, Dan Bilzerian, all men who lack self-esteem. It is a person's sense of life, quoting now from Miss Rand in the Romantic Manifesto. It is with a person's sense of life that one falls in love, with that essential sum, the fundamental stand or way of facing existence, which is the embodiment of personality. One falls in love with the embodiment of the values that formed a person's character, which are reflected in his wildest goals or smallest gestures, which create the style of his soul, the individual style of unique, irrepeatable, irreplaceable consciousness. Now, to anyone who says Miss Rand is not a beautiful, eloquent writer, whatever people say about it, I mean, give him the Romantic Manifesto. Give him some of these passages. They're so beautifully written from every perspective. That I think really says it. It is is with a person's sense of life that one falls in love. And I'll tell a story now. Dr. Peikoff tells on one of his podcasts, and I encourage you to look at all those podcasts. But if you can hit this up in the, now, Apollo, I'm getting to that recommendation. But if anyone recommends that, hit us up in the super chat, and we'll get you something very special from the Ayn Rand Center UK. Dr. Peikoff tells, thank you, James. And if anyone knows this, it's James Valiant. Dr. Peikoff tells a story in his podcast about a person for whom Ayn Rand knew. I remember it as a friend or a student of Ayn Rand's. And this student would, again, this is per Dr. Peikoff, a student of Ayn Rand's would always tell Ayn Rand or had a remark to Ayn Rand how he didn't like what they called, I guess, back in the day, piano legs, short, stubby legs. You know, sometimes women have shorter, stubbier legs. They're a part of the human species. A lot of men have them too. For a while, they were called piano legs. This is what I could find in them. These are kind of the heavier legs. And Dr. Peikoff tells this story. Thank you, Mark. Very generous Kroner contribution. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate you being part of our philosophy posse. Thank you, Catherine, for being part of our philosophy posse. You guys are the ones that keep, wait, let me just stop this. Let me stop the piano legs. You guys are the ones that keep us on the air. You are the Ayn Rand Center UK. You are the integral members who show up every day here and make this show possible. Mark, Catherine, Robert, James, all of you. We couldn't thank you more for being not just a part, for being the integral part of what we're trying to put out day after day after day. Information that inspires, information that maybe intrigues, but more than anything else, information that leads you to pick up Ayn Rand. The short essays, the long books, make it Dr. Peikoff's podcasts, make this just friggin' lifetime's worth of work. It's available. It's out there. It's free. Make it part of your life. Dr. Peikoff's story again. Ayn Rand had a friend who made it clear to Ayn Rand that he hated a woman's chubby legs. He hated fat little legs. He hated piano legs. Years later, he came back to Ayn Rand with his then, I believe, wife, James, correct me, could have been girlfriend, but I believe wife, and said, "This is my wife. Have you ever seen a more beautiful, wondrous, wonderful person?" And she had, wait for it, chubby piano legs. And that is the whole idea. You don't fall in love with someone's legs. You fall in love, I believe, with that integrated sense of life that Miss Rand spoke about. From the virtue of selfishness, to love is to value. Only a rationally selfish man, a man of self-esteem, is capable of love, because he is the only man capable of holding firm, consistent, uncompromising, unbetrayed values. The man who does not value himself cannot value anything or anyone. It's just, that's from the virtue of selfishness, you know, kind of going to the point of there's so much of Ayn Rand's about love and so much for you to avail herself with, probably starting with the fiction, Atlas Shrugged, and The Fountainhead. To say I love you, one must first know how to say I, Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead. You'll find that in so many high schoolers' Chandler's notebooks, or what do they call them in their texts, Trapper Keepers, or whatever the fuck they're called now. It's a great quote. It gets to the heart of it, and it gets to the beginning of what should be your study of Ayn Rand's understanding of love. Now, it was recommended on the Super Chat earlier. Among the resources out there is a great book by a woman who's appeared right here on this channel, Miss Dr. Ellen Kenner, her writing partner, I believe, Dr. Edwin Locke, The Selfish Path to Romance, How to Love with Passion and Reason, by those two individuals. Highly recommended. And of course, Ayn Rand's The Romantic Manifesto, highly recommended, which is not about love per se. It's about art, it's about literature, but has so much about love in it and about aesthetics in it. So certainly recommend that at all. And I seriously recommend, stop what you're doing. Wait, don't stop now. But in about 3 or 4 minutes, stop what you're doing, head over to peikoff.com and type love into Dr. Peikoff's podcast engine. There is so much out there. I mean, the fact that you all out there are not like chit-chatting about Dr. Peikoff's podcast. There's so much out there. There's like a month's worth on love alone of Dr. Peikoff's podcast, segmented into very short, enjoyable PDF or JPEG. What are the files. Go check them out. Check them out now. And thank you so much again for being part of what we do day after day after day if you're in the US, and night after night after night if you're in jolly old England. In fact, coming up in just a few moments here on the channel, 7 p.m. UK time is, speaking of Fountainhead, the Fountainhead books and the Fountainhead book session. It's only for Ayn Rand Center UK's though. So you take this opportunity to sign up, become a member. It's so easy, and there's so much out there. These private sessions on the Fountainhead with people like James Valiant, people like Robert Nacer, people like Don Watkins, people like, I don't know, Harry Binswanger, who knew and studied and published with Miss Rand. We're bringing it all to you. We're bringing you the tools you need to better understand and better enjoy objectivism. Thank you, Wes. Wes says, with a really super generous contribution, Wes, you're not only in the philosophy posse, you're leading it. Today, you're leading it. Thank you. Wes says, great topic. Whenever I hear love is selfless, I lose a little bit of my sanity. All right, I'm giving it back to you. You've got all of it. But I echo your frustration when I hear, love is selfless. I love my partner selfishly. What? You love your partner selfishly. You want her. You want no one else to have her. She or he is yours alone. And that's love. Thank you, Wes. And thank you. Keep it tuned right here on Ayn Rand Center UK. Take this opportunity to become a member of, what is really the only thing out there that is radical, and that is objectivism. Free market capitalism, and all that comes along with Ayn Rand's objectivism. So take this opportunity, become a member, become part of what we're doing here. Read Ayn Rand every day, even as just like picking up the nonfiction. Read a little bit, read a half of an essay every day. You're going to be glad that you did. We'll see you in just 38 minutes for the book club. I'll be there. I'm planning on being there. As Trump would say, I'll be there. And we'll see.